Is real estate investing right for everyone? This week on the Extreme Personal Finance Show. Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of the Extreme Personal Finance Show. We have a really great guest this week, and I met this guest at a Camp FI last year. He is a software engineer and has built an amazing real estate investment portfolio, all while still working his 9 to 5 job. He's fixed and flipped over 25 properties in the Detroit, Michigan area. But get this, did this all while living in Seattle, Washington. So I'm really excited to talk to him about this. He has a really deep knowledge of long distance investing, fixing and flipping, using the BRRRR method, as well as short-term rentals. Welcome, Nick Sehy. Nick, how you doing, man?
Good. How are you, Chris?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I know we met at Camp FI Midwest last year.
Yep, Minnesota.
So yeah. I know it's been a few months. I know you and I we connect online every now and then, like Instagram. You're posting, you're on other shows usually, or else you're showing people the octopus furnace inside
Yeah,
inside
I
properties.
thought people liked that. I thought that was a good one
That was a great
last.
one. Yeah. Usually when I walk in and I see something like that, I just turn around and walk out.
No, why do you see that? That's where the money is, right? Because of people like you walking out.
That's right. You definitely you'll take on those projects.
Yeah.
So really quick, well, before we really get rolling into talking about some of the advantages or reasons why someone may not want to go into real estate investing, I want to just, let people know kind of, who you are and basically give us a quick rundown. Like, how did you actually get into real estate to begin with, and how you were able to do that all while working your full-time job?
Yeah, so I'm Nick Sehy. So I originally started in real estate investing in 2020. I first started by reading the book by Scott Trench. He's the CEO of Bigger Pockets. He was the CEO, and I read his book. It's called Set for Life, and it kind of just goes over. It's not even a real estate focused book, really. It just goes over kind of simple things you can do as somebody that's going out of college to, I guess, better your finances, or just think about like that most people don't really think about that costs you a lot of money. And the main thing he kind of pointed out was that I think most people spend, I don't remember what it was, like 30 or 40% of every paycheck on housing payments.
Sure.
Um, so he just showed the power of like number one, like house hacking and like figuring out how just to lower your housing payment. And number two is just like transportation, but um, and just like being close to your job and figuring that out. But the main thing for me was kind of the housing portion of that. And I, at that point, I didn't realize why would why would I want to just put 20% down on a house every time and just like have a rental and just continue to, just put 20% down, 20% down, 20% down. That's kind of how I first thought about it when I first started in real estate, or like when I first had thoughts about real estate. Um, but then I started reading more books and figuring out how to have more control over adding value, and building a bigger portfolio without putting basically your money into it at the end of the deal, which is where the BRRRR method came in. And I thought that was, it's a great way to have to invest. And I think the second or the third thing too is I really wanted more control over um, my money too. And um, I feel like real estate gives you that more than kind of the stock market, because, there's just a lot that goes on in the world that impacts the stock market that I can't really control. Same with real estate too, but when you're renovating a property, it's pretty easy to tell how much money you're going to make at the end of a deal. Um, or so I guess the main thing is I just felt like I had more control of real estate, and that's kind of why I went down that path as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think you mentioned the BRRRR method. For those people that are new that may not know what that process is of investing, can you just quickly high level, what is the BRRRR method?
Yeah, so BRRRR is buy, rehab, renovate, and repeat. I might have missed one. Buy, rehab, renovate,
Refinance.
rent and repeat. There you go. But yeah, essentially it's a method that allows you to continue to invest the same capital in a ideal world infinite times and be able to grow the same capital as many times as possible as soon as you finish a house. So the example I give people is like, say you purchase a house for $50,000 and the house next to it is sold for $100,000 within the past 6 months. If you can rehab that house that's worth $50,000 and only put, let's say, about 20,000 into it, what you can do at that point after you've renovated the house is you can ask for a refinance in the from the bank, and the bank will see that the house next to you is worth $100,000. And so they'll value your house at $100,000 and they'll give you a new mortgage on that house at $75,000. So essentially when you add the 50 and the 20,000, plus the closing costs, you're basically didn't put any money into this house, and you now own that house without putting any money down into that house. So that's kind of what I just did. It's a nice way too to build equity as well, because at that point you have $25,000 in equity as well. Um, so yeah, so I thought that method was great. I was using it for a long time until 2023 came about, and the interest rates went from 3% to like 7%, seven and a
Sure.
half, 8%. Um, and then I've kind of just transitioned more into like flipping now.
Okay.
I'm still actually do some more burr stuff as well. It's just harder is the main thing.
Is it harder to find those properties? Like what are the biggest challenges now with those higher interest rates?
Yeah, just previously we were looking at like 300, 350 a month in cash flow, like off of profit off any rental.
Hmm.
And now we're down to like I'd say like 50 to 100 to break even. And at some point I just kind of have to ask myself, like, is it worth me going through all that pain, keep that house forever to just for like 50 to $100 in rental.
Sure. Sure.
So that's kind of where I've transitioned, and I'm more interested in flipping, and yeah, I'm just kind of going with the flipping game for now because houses are still selling pretty well. I don't know in Minnesota, but in
Hmm.
Detroit, they're, still selling record high prices. And
Yeah, there's not enough inventory here,
yeah,
so
so yeah, I mean, it's the flipping game's still strong for me. So I just have to roll with what the market gives me for now. And hopefully the interest rates go back down and we can get back into rentals because, I think in the ideal run, rentals are a better you make more money in rentals like than flipping, in my opinion. Because like, well, I mean, that's controversial, but like in the long run, you can make a lot more money in rentals, right?
hmm.
Um, so I don't know, Chris. I feel like I'm just like going on forever, but
It's all good. So
yeah,
like now transitioning more to like flipping, give us an example of like something that you would purchase this house for so much, you would put in so much of, your own money for rehab, or you would borrow money to for that rehab. And then how long does a typical, like I'm super nervous. Like I know I talk to people all the time and they were like, "Oh, like you should get into flipping." And for me, it seems like I'd be super anxious about a crunched timeline.
yeah,
Like if you're borrowing money at a higher interest rate, to do the rehab, and you got to make sure that, I don't know, like problems could come up. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
yes. I mean, you're absolutely correct. Like there's always problems that happen in your rehab budget. There's always worth putting contingency in. And it is stressful. Like there's no doubt about it. It's like it's stressful because you're generally like Chris probably knows like the name of this game is usually getting some type of hard money loan, which is generally like a short term loan, which you have to finish the house usually within 8 to 12 months, get it sold, and that interest rate is usually pretty high at about anywhere from 10 to 12% usually. So yeah, that makes you really move it and have to finish the house fast. So it is stressful, definitely. So there's no doubt about it. It's definitely it's not for people that they can't handle all the stress and compressed timelines.
Right, right. Are you working with a pretty good team, and as well as yourself, to be able to accurately and effectively like estimate the rehab costs? Because that's something where I've 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 attempted to do that, and I've actually invited friends that are like contractors to kind of walk through the property, and it's like I was never confident that the rehab budget was in line to what actually it would be, right? So, I mean, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, there's like definitely there's always stuff that comes up. I I generally am pretty conservative these days, just because I know there's always small things that come up. Like it's always there's you know the main thing I think is just getting the price right on the bigger things, and then putting contingency budget in there. Then a lot of times though, I put my after repair sell value more conservatively as well, and a lot of the times those kind of balance out. That's
Sure.
kind of my experience usually. Um, so that's kind of been my experience. Yeah, I guess when you start out, like luckily I had a contractor that, or I had an agent that kind of doubles as a contractor, so she gave me
Hmm.
a bid as well as touring the house with me. So we kind of had an arrangement where she was gonna do it and help me with it. Um,
Oh, that's yeah, great
yeah,
relationship
so
there.
that was a great start to get in. And if you guys are able to find something like that, it's definitely worthwhile because I think everybody encounters that issue, right? Like anybody in the street doesn't usually know how much it costs to replace a furnace, how much it costs to replace an AC unit, how much does an appliance package install cost, how much is it per linear square feet of quartz countertop or something,
Sure.
right? It's all there's just a ton of small things, and for me, a lot of the times now it's just based on experience, like based on what I've experienced before, getting walkthrough videos and pictures, making sure I see everything and double and triple checking my work. Um, that's kind of what I've been doing lately. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I know. I mean, I know that it's different when I was managing properties or, I have something that needs repaired or replaced, let's say an appliance repair, let's say someone's washing machine or dryer. I include those in my rentals. I know some people don't, but I include washer and dryer. And like if a dryer goes out or something, right? I'll just, when I was managing, I would just use my truck, stop at Menards, buy one for a few $100, go
yeah,
install it and take the old one out. And it's different. It's interesting because then when something like that happened, I would notice that like my management company would go and buy like the most expensive dryer they
oh,
could find, and it's like, what do you like? You know, I don't live there. Come on.
yeah, I know. It's just yeah, I don't know what your experience with management companies was, but I first came with the idea. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna use a PM and everything will work well, and I don't have to. I'll just focus on my 9 to 5 all day, and they'll send me reports and fix everything. But I don't know your experiences, but like they just like everything just seems very expensive. Um, and then I think the issue is too is like when you get these property management companies, they get too many units. Like if you're like one or two houses or something, like you're the low man on the totem pole versus the guy that's got like 50 units and getting managed
Right,
by.
right.
So,
It's taken me a few different management companies over the years to finally find one that, we're definitely in alignment and they understand kind of my goals. They understand, I have clear rules on if repairs are over a certain amount, they'll reach out to me if I had preferred vendors. A lot of times I now will provide them with my preferred vendor for like HVAC or plumbing or something. And I know I'm going to get a really good rate for that. So it's worked out. And let's actually talk about, I mean, some of the advantages of real estate investing. Like I'm definitely an advocate of real estate investing. I feel as though, it's often considered one of the best ways to really build wealth. It provides multiple ways to really generate income, right? You're going to have the rental income, you're going to have appreciation. And like you said, unlike other investment types like stocks or something like that, you have more control over like the return a little bit. It seems like it, right? At least in my opinion when in terms of why someone may not consider real estate investing as part of their overall portfolio. And that's interesting too. I was just talking with Mindy and Carl Jensen
mhm.
on the Bigger Pockets Money podcast around life after FI, but they talked about real estate investing. And the question was, well, how much of my real estate is part of my overall portfolio? Some people go all in on real estate or they go all in on the market. But I'm really kind of somewhere in the middle. I think I have about 50% of my overall investment portfolio in real estate. But there are people like I know one of my friends, he was very adamant that he just does not want to be in real estate investing at all, right? So he was all about the market. And so some of those key things, people may not be willing to accept are, like we talked about, some of the management challenges, right? We just talked about that. But also there are some things like the initial like high costs to get in. What do you think about, one of the big things too is understanding that sometimes your money is not liquid then, right? So it's kind of tied up in that investment. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, no, I mean it's definitely um like not being able to touch like it takes it usually takes a couple months to sell a house, right? So
Mhm.
I guess that's a double-edged sword, right? Because because you know when Trump like puts the tariffs at what 120%, the market freaks out for 3 days. I can't sell a house in 3 day time frame, so I'm kind
Right,
of like,
right.
well, like so,
Exactly. Good point.
so you know, I mean, I might as well not worry about it. So that's one side of the coin there. Um, what were the other things you said? Kind of like the higher down payment and
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I think that's where some people, because usually those are some of the conversations I have, like when I'm at meetup groups or other breakout sessions, they're like, well, how can you get in? Like, how do I get my very first real estate investment property? Because usually that down payment, that 20% down payment, it's just hard for them to come by.
yeah, I think the major like a lot of the ways most people start that I didn't that I should still do is house hack.
Hmm.
So essentially, what you can do is on a primary loan, like I know there's FHAs at 3.5%, but I think conventional even's at 5%. You can just put 3.5 or 5% down, which like in most markets isn't great. I mean, it depends on what crazy amount of money is, but it's not 20%. And a lot of people just do that. And what they do is they get like a duplex or something that has more than one unit, then they rent out the other units, or they rent out the rooms to their friends if you're in a higher price market. And that's a greater way to get in without having to put down a lot of money on it. So yeah, that's I guess that's what I'd recommend for people that is like really concerned about the down payment is like use that as your primary home. And I like think about all the money I've like spent on rent these times. If I was like paying towards a mortgage, like getting tax benefits, getting like appreciation on the house, like it would be like just make a lot of money, right?
Sure.
Like all the benefits of just owning a house um, that I didn't have because I haven't rent. I've just like been renting. So that's why I recommend for people that are worried about down payment.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. What do you think? There are other people out in the personal finance community that say, oh, well, when you start investing, well, you got to make sure that you're you're not taking out debt, you're buying these properties all in cash, and not to over leverage yourself. What are your thoughts
Um,
about leverage, using debt, and how concerned do you have to be about, like, is another 2008 going to happen?
yeah, I mean, there's definitely like I haven't lived through 2008, so there's people. I mean, I have, but like I haven't been investing in real estate during 2008. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely like people that are worried about leverage, and I think it makes sense. For me, for my rentals, I mean, people are always going to need a home, right? So
That's right.
I'm not too worried about people never renting out my houses. Um, I'm more worried about, like let's have a bunch of flips and I can't sell them. I think the nice thing is usually I have good margin on my flips, so usually I'm at like a min 40 or 50K profit. So if the market does tank, I think I'd have to cut the losses and just I think that would be my plan essentially. But I think with the deal with leverage versus cash too, I think it just really depends on what works for you. Like for I know it just takes a while, right? Like how am I supposed to afford like a two or $300,000 house just like saving compiling cash, working off the job, and like the only way I can think of speeding that up usually is through leverage in some way or another,
Hmm.
um, like going to a bank or using the seller as a bank. Like that's the only way I can think about speeding up and making more money honestly. So that's the life I'm willing to live is like to use a little bit more leverage to do more deals
Hmm.
instead of just going all cash on a property.
Right. Yeah, I feel the same way. I feel as though you can definitely use leverage to accelerate your path to financial independence, financial freedom, like whatever your goal is. But just again, be aware of what your overall loan to value is. And I mean, just like you said, even if the market does the housing market, like there's some sort of real estate market decline,
Mhm.
right? There's the risk. Like you said, people always need a place to live. So as long as I have these income producing assets, right? I have the rental property that someone's there, they're still paying me rent, and I can withstand that until the market rebounds and goes back up again, right? I mean, that's the thought that I have. But again, you don't want to be overextended so that you still are unable to, make those mortgage payments and that type of thing.
Exactly right. You always need cash reserves. Like, you don't want to be, things get really stressful, like when you don't have any money and you have to do
Yeah,
things.
I that yeah. A little story. I think I mentioned it on another episode, but it's a real estate episode, so I might as well share that. That happened to me over COVID, where I didn't have as much reserve as I really should, and part of the reason why is that for a couple years I was taking every single like all my cash flowing, all my positive cash flowing, rental income, and I was paying down the debt, and I did kind of similar to like a snowball method. I listed like all my rental properties. I had some that were in like a portfolio loan. Then I had some individual ones, and they're in like an LLC, and I had a couple that I think were personal on mine. But I just listed them out, and I had one that I had like 110,000 left. It was like my lowest loan, and I just started dumping cash on it. And
Yeah,
so, yeah, within like a year and a half, I paid it off.
nice.
That was great. And then COVID happened.
Yeah,
And then so again, no one has that crystal ball. But then I had tenants that two things. One, they lost their jobs
yeah,
and they decided, hey, I got to relocate back to my parents in South Dakota or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, of course, I totally get it, right? So then I was without rent on some of those properties, but then I also had tenants that would apply for and be part of the Minnesota COVID relief program, which basically said I don't have to pay rent and I could not evict them. So then this went on for months, like 5, 6 months of me not getting rent. And I still had to pay my
yeah,
commercial loans. And to your point, I was so low on my reserves. There was a couple months there where luckily I was working my 9 to 5.
yeah.
I had to use personal money to pay the bank, which had never happened before. And so I glad you brought it up because having reserves is so important for times like that.
Yeah, and I remember like during COVID, like you would eventually get the money, but it was like you had to wait months though, usually
Yep,
like to get that money finally. So just like, you had to
exactly.
call the
Exactly.
quarter or whatever. I forgot what you had to call or check with something, and you'd finally get a little jackpot and things would de-stress a little bit.
Yep, exactly. Exactly. Well, again, you already kind of talked about a little bit, some of those ways to start in investing. I guess one of the big things that I'm curious about because I don't have the guts to do it is the long distance investing. And so I want you to kind of talk a little bit about how you manage that and what are some like advice you would give somebody because yeah, I let's say if they live in a higher cost of living area and they want to invest somewhere else. How do you get
Mhm.
started?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of people, live in the West Coast or East Coast where, things are super expensive. And it doesn't make sense to buy like a rental, like a normal rental, whereas in, probably Minnesota, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, Ohio, like a lot of Midwest and South, it still makes sense to, get a rental where you can make profit off it. Yeah, that's what I saw basically. Like I live in Seattle, Washington, and I don't know what the average house is now, but probably like 7 or 800,000. It
Wow.
just didn't make sense to buy a rental here. Um, for me. So, I was like, okay, like have to start looking at markets. I looked at San Antonio for a while, and that I still feel like that's probably a good market. The property taxes are pretty really high in Texas, but I couldn't find anything, so then I went to Detroit, and you know, there's a lot of work to be done in Detroit. So the Burr method works very well there. Um, So that's kind of where I found Detroit. Um, and yeah, I mean, it's definitely like a work in progress. Like there's some days like definitely if I'm there, I feel like I could get these things done faster. But I think the main thing is just always getting pictures and videos and making sure that you have a good idea of if they're coming or not and the progress on the houses. Um, and just, I'd say just stay on top of it's the main thing. Like, that's the only thing really you can do.
Sure. So establishing a good team that you would be working with remotely, did
Yeah.
you go through a little bit of trials and tribulations to find the
Oh,
right
for
people to
sure.
work with?
Like, I'd be surprised, like, if any real estate investor that does like fix and flips or like burr stuff is said like, okay, the first contractor I found was the perfect guy that worked for me. Like, I would be that's like a very anomaly versus like versus like what the truth is. Um and yeah, I don't know. I mean as a GC I've probably been through four. Um and yeah, I mean it's always a never ending search. Like, sometimes GCs get too busy too, then your project gets slow.
Hmm.
Especially when, they have a lot of projects going on. So those kinds of things as well. And now these days, so I have a couple of subcontractors that I use a lot. And generally, when I need something else, I just ask them because these people that are working in the fields all the time really have, for me, a good idea um, of who's a pretty good person or like pretty good contractor. They usually have a pretty good idea, and generally that or other real estate investors will have a good idea of who a good contractor is. Um, so for people, I recommend like trying to find a contractor. Join like a Facebook group in your neighborhood. I'm sure in Minnesota it probably has like Minnesota Real Estate Investor Group or
Yep.
something.
Yep.
St. Paul, Minneapolis Real Estate Investor Group. I'm sure there's probably a Facebook page. And then say like just do Control F like for general contractor, and then you'll have a bunch of people. You'll have a bunch of posts from the last 5 years that'll say like, "I used this person for this job. He did great. I used this person. He sucked." Uh,
Right.
and that's like one of the best ways I've found to actually find people, just like based really on just other people. And the cool thing too in the Detroit one is like this guy is like he's created a whole spreadsheet that of like good contractors versus bad ones and
Wow,
good
that's awesome.
experiences. So anytime I find a new contractor, I look in this guy's sheet, see if anybody else has used it. I look in the Facebook groups to see if anybody's had bad experiences with this person. Um, so it's really just like knowing knowing people that use good contractors leads to more good contractors, and then just really just doing as much online research as well that you can. Um, that's kind of the best way I've found is kind of stay away from bad contractors.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I have a couple that I recently just sold a few properties, and I have one that's going to be selling here in May. And this is for a much larger project that I'm working on. But again, to your point, like I needed again, like overall, I need to paint the entire inside. I need all new flooring, so I need all new carpet because it was just kind of beat up. And it's one of those things where I work really closely with my agent who understands rentals versus, buying, a home for your family. And she has all these other contacts because she's constantly buying and selling homes. And so if you need something fixed to sell a home, for example, and so I was able to just make that call and she's like, yeah, I have this guy, and this guy, and I'll get the best guy out there to replace my carpet. And you know, I didn't have to go through. So kind of like who you know, right? So
Yep.
that's something that really helped me find out.
That's
Um,
the best way. Yep.
yeah. Although this one guy, it was so funny. This one guy where he was an awesome like interior painter. I
Mhm.
hired him over COVID to paint the inside of my house. And he just went above and beyond. Like it was just fantastic. And I reached out to him and first of all, the dude he was jacked. Like he was like his arms were so big, like
Part of
his
the
neck,
experience. This is what you're
dude,
also paying for.
he was just huge. But anyway, I reached out to him for a couple other projects I had, and I said, "Hey, I got some projects. I'm wondering if you'd be willing. And he goes, no, I manage 3 Snap Fitness franchises now. And I'm like,
Oh
oh,
wow.
that makes sense,
Yeah, I think that sounds like a better deal than what he was doing before.
right?
I mean,
Oh, too funny.
it's crazy. Some of these, this is kind of a sidetrack, but some of these
Yeah.
contractors, like they're making a ton of money. Like especially like plumbers, electricians, like HVAC people.
Yeah.
Like like this is another side story, but I
Hmm.
literally just bought a. So I just have a house I'm about to flip, and I work with this HVAC guy a lot. Like on all my flips, I use the same guy.
Hmm.
It's generally what you do when you're doing pretty good value. You just kind of use the same people because you know they're good at what they do. They do it fast, no headaches.
Yep.
But this guy's like, so I was like, oh, I need to find a lender. I don't know how it got to this, and he's like, oh, I'll pay like the entire purchase and the renovation cost, which was like 330,000. I was like, holy crap! And then so he just bought the house, and we have an
Wow.
agreement to, he's going to fund my entire rehab, and I'm giving him a good return on it, obviously, a good interest rate. But whatever, I think the main lesson is here is we have to relook at like all of us just becoming HVAC.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I know. Well, and I've actually brought that up to both my kids. They're 25 and 23, and I'm like, hey man, you could like, and we have schooling here in Minnesota where they could go to school for HVAC for free.
Yeah.
We have
Oh my
associates
gosh.
programs where it's like you could get your school paid for. Like, wow.
Yeah, like in HVAC in Minnesota too. Like, I mean, middle of winter, if your furnace is out,
Dude, you got to
that
be
guy's
there.
gonna, people are gonna pay whatever it takes to get that
I've
furnace
done
fixed.
it. I've had furnaces go out where I had rentals, and I'm like, well, I can't have them sit in the cold, right? You got to get somebody out there.
Is to like yeah, it's like as soon as the person calls, like in the middle of winter, like you're gonna have to pay whatever this guy whatever this guy wants to say, right? Like, if
Exactly,
there's
exactly. And
issues
I've
or
actually
something.
I've actually done the same way on the other side too, middle of summer, and it's like 100 degrees with like 80% humidity, and I've dropped off like a portable AC unit because my HVAC guy was so booked up, he couldn't get there for like 6 days. He was doing multiple installs per day, and I was like, man, so I didn't want my tenants to sit there and just be miserable. So at least they could like use this portable AC for like, they could sleep comfortably, until I can
Yeah,
get it fixed.
yeah, those are like there's usually nothing that's super emergency in rental units. Like usually you can wait a couple days, to there's usually non-emergency, but HVAC is usually an emergency or like a pretty nasty plumbing leak are kind of the main two. Um, but yeah, anyway, like when those two things happen, like people pay whatever it takes to get that thing fixed, right? So
Right, right. It's awesome. Well, Nick, again, I really appreciate you joining me to talk about real estate investing. I'd love to have you on again sometime. We can go
yeah,
deep down into, you know, any different parts of real estate investing. I know you also have experience in short term, and we can talk through that through another time. But in the end, I think that just like personal finance and investing, it's very personalized to, your financial goals, definitely your risk tolerance, because some people just say real estate, it's just too risky. I don't want to be, being called in the middle of the night or whatever, whatever the excuse is. Totally get it. It's got to match your lifestyle. So if real estate does excite you, I really encourage you, man, dive in, learn tons, make those moves. And I think there's plenty of paths to kind of work your way, being successful with real estate investing. So thanks again, Nick. Any, you know what? Let people know where if they want to like follow you on social or where they can get a hold of you.
you can follow me at nick.sehy. You can just follow me on Instagram there. And there, I think I have a Calendly link too as well. If you just want to chat real estate, I'm happy to talk and see how I can help in any way. So yeah, I feel like when I started, there wasn't a ton of people doing kind of rehab type stuff. So I hope I can be some type of resource for people out there and be able to help somebody out.
Awesome. Love it. Thanks again. And again, we will see you next time on the Extreme Personal Finance Show. Be sure to like and subscribe and share with your friends. See you later.